Today I spoke with Ashutosh, who's one of those rare founders because he didn't just do it once. He made it happen twice in a big way. He worked at Google for 4 years, left Google, and started a company called Bloomreach. Bloomreach has gone on to raise $450 million. But halfway through that journey, started in 2009, and by 2016, Ashutosh decided to leave to do it all over again. And he started a company called Eightfold, which is the one we're talking about today. That company has gone on to also raise $400 million. The funny part was that when he left Bloomreach, he didn't even have a clear idea of what he was going to build. He thought he was going to do something in the health space, and he ended up totally pivoting and doing something in the HR space. It took him about 2 years to really figure it out. But once he did, he found true product market fit, and he scaled from $1 million in ARR to $3 million in ARR the year after to $12 million in ARR the year after that. Welcome to the Product Market Fit Show, brought to you by Mistral, a seed stage firm based in Canada. I'm Pablo. I'm a founder turned VC. My goal is to help early stage founders like you find product market fit. Well, Ashutosh, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Super excited to be here, Pablo.
You know, it's actually really rare to start a company that ends up raising $100 million in venture capital or more. It's even more rare to do it 2 times. So maybe we can kind of start there, because before Eightfold, you had a company called Bloomreach. And as I understand, you left that company. That company's gone on to raise like over $400 million. You left that company to start Eightfold. So I'm curious, what's the story there?
So I started Bloomreach with my co-founder Raj back in 2009, was there for roughly 7.5 years. And in 2016, left that to start Eightfold. Key idea was that now I have a good succession plan in place. The company is doing well, and that gives me an opportunity to try out new things. And that is what led to start of Eightfold.
What was Bloomreach?
Bloomreach started out as a company in the organic search, natural search space for digital marketers. How do you improve the traffic to your website? So coming out of Google, working in the search quality team, I kind of knew the challenges that these marketers were facing. They were constantly struggling to try to figure out what they can do to make their website show up in Google search results. And there were a lot of black hat SEO out there. There were a lot of misconceptions, misinformation. So I was like, can we build a technology solution over here that can help these marketers do the right thing in a scalable fashion? And that is what led to the start of Bloomreach. So it was a solution for digital marketers.
And so I understand that by the time you left, you had kind of a succession plan and things were a little bit more stable. What drove that decision? Like, what was happening at the time? Because, you know, like, and you're not the first founder to do this, but at the same time, I'm always like, when you start a startup, your goal is for that startup to work, to get really big, to be successful. And so I'm always shocked, like, when that happens, and then the founder's like, let's do it again. You know, so like, what kind of was happening? What mindset were you in at the time? And why did you end up doing that?
Mainly it was driven by, I wanted to have a different kind of impact on a society, and building a business, helping digital marketers, driving more traffic, improving the ROI on digital spend is important, extremely good. But still you are few hops away from impacting people directly in a positive fashion. And I started thinking about what can I do in the second part of my career, my life, that will be a lot more impactful for the society. And after exploring education and healthcare, what I realized is that employment is the single most important thing in our society. If I can help people get a better job, better employment, I will have a much bigger, more fundamental impact. And that was the reason why I left Bloomreach to start Eightfold.
And you were having these thoughts like while you were still running and being the CTO of Bloomreach?
Correct.
What stage did you get to in the development of Eightfold before you took that leap?
I think it's always a challenge that when you're working as a CTO co-founder, right, you really don't have any bandwidth to do much.
That's right.
So it was just a vision that I want to do something over here. You wanted to have a clear separation that, okay, I'm 100% devoted to Bloomreach and now I'm going to leave and start something. But Eightfold started all after I left Bloomreach.
And how did that, I just have to ask, like, how did the discussion go with your co-founder when you're like, hey, I want to do it again. I want to go from 0 to 1 again?
I think it was a heads up over a 2-year period. So it wasn't like one day you wake up and you go and tell that person. You're like, okay, at some point I want to do something else. Let me think about that. Let's work together towards building a succession plan, solidifying the company, having certain metrics in place that will say that I'm ready to leave and the company is ready to keep on executing without me. So as a simple example, right, we raised our funding just before I left and made sure that the new investors knew that I'm going to leave as part of, or a few months after that funding round. So all these things have to be in place. The right funding has to be there, right technology has to be there, customers have to be in a good place, right team has to be there, right? And it's a partnership. So you're working with your co-founder to ensure that all those things are in place so that as and when you leave, things will get handled properly.
And so what was your first step like after that happened, after you left with Eightfold?
So actually, when I left Bloomreach, I left to start something in the healthcare space, not in the employment space. So the good thing is that as a second-time founder, you already know a number of investors. So I was constantly talking to them, engaging with them around what they are seeing in the market. I had some of my ideas in the healthcare space, so I was spending time with healthcare professionals.
What was the main idea that you were chasing in health?
So it evolved a lot, but eventually it was around enabling second opinion for people with severe conditions, illness. And instead of having a second opinion through a network of doctors that you have hired or partnered with, enabling it through a network of hospitals that we already trust. So for example, Mass General in Boston to Cleveland Clinic to Mayo Clinic to Apollo in India and so on and so forth. So I spent time with all these hospitals, Stanford Hospital, met a number of folks. The second thing is today the buyer of healthcare benefits is largely HR departments of large organizations as they are self-insured. So I was also spending time with HR benefits leader at Adobe, Google, and a variety of other large companies. And as you can see, I was spending time with these HR leaders. And what kept coming back to me was that healthcare is important, but our bigger problem is talent. So can you help us with talent? And that will help our organizations much more.
This is really interesting to me because it's really easy when you have an idea already in mind, even a space, like pretty general idea that you had, to miss those other cues, because you might go into these discussions to HR leaders and right away, you're talking about healthcare and the discussion gets boxed in and nobody even has the space really to tell you, yeah, this is important, but actually talent is more important. And how did you set things up so that you were actually able to listen beyond even the space that you thought you wanted to tackle?
Excellent question. And I think it's not that people will not share that with you. You have to just look for the cues. You have to have an open mind. I mean, this podcast is all about product market fit, right? So you need to have a conviction in your idea, in your vision. But at the same time, you need to be vulnerable and be open to exposed, right? So I say that almost like 80% is conviction and 20% you are going over there with an open mind to listen what they can tell you that could be of interest, right? Anytime someone says no, as a founder, as an entrepreneur, on one hand, it hurts a lot, but it's not about your idea is good or not and how do you convince them. Key thing is that what are they telling you and what is the truth behind that? And is there any signal that you should pay attention to? Especially in the early days, if you just focus on convincing the other person, I mean, you have not achieved anything. I mean, some people will just say that, okay, fine, who cares, right? Actually, your idea is good, but that's not helping you. What you have to do is keep probing. Why are you not liking it? What are the challenges you are seeing over here? What else is top of the mind thing for you? So go in, be inquisitive, be curious, be open-minded, but at the same time, have a clear idea that this is what I'm doing right now. This is what I'm thinking about, right? And at any point in time, you're getting variety of signals. And that's a tough balance between constantly thrashing, constantly switching ideas, to being too dogmatic about your own idea and not paying attention to what market is telling you.
Do you remember, I know this was 8 years ago, but do you remember any of the conversations, especially the ones that, where you walked out of the room and started to rethink, not so much the approach, but the idea, right? And all of a sudden started to think about, maybe it's not about health. Maybe there's an even bigger problem to solve here.
I think in this ideation phase, especially when I'm in that ideation phase, right? What I'm doing is I'm constantly thinking about new ideas and not marrying myself to one idea. Now, at any point in time, one idea is at the top of that stack, the others are not. So that's what I say, you are constantly paying attention. But then there are 5 other ideas. You're constantly calling people about 4 other ideas as well, or 5 other ideas, not just your primary idea. So for example, when I was talking to my investors, these people that I've known from the past, they're like, Ashu, we like healthcare and we like you, but healthcare is a tough space and with all kinds of challenges, we really want to get into healthcare. Now, what was interesting is that almost all of them said that if you really want to pursue healthcare, we will invest in you. But one of the things they said, for example, was we will invest in the startup because of you, but not because of healthcare. I'm like, okay, here is a signal. So let me just keep paying attention to these signals. Let little bit time guide you over next 2-3 months. And I'm not letting it to be a 2-year journey either, because then you just are thrashing, constantly going back and forth. You're not making any progress, right? You're not trying to condense everything in a week's period either. So give it 3-4 months time. Keep listening to the market. Keep listening to what people are telling you. I think one thing over here, at least that what works well for me is not, if you have one idea, then more often than not, instead of being excited about the idea, you have fear of not being able to pursue anything. And that forces you to keep doing what you're doing. If you have 3-4 ideas on day one, then you're not really married. You're more open, more flexible. You always have like, okay, I can figure out something else, right? And then see very quickly, try to have one idea bubble up and others die down.
I like that a lot, especially because lately I've been thinking about this. Founders are almost always on a spectrum. I don't know if you'll agree or not, but at least this is how I think about it, which is excitement on one side and fear on the other. And there's always things to be fearful of and things to be excited of. You'll oscillate. Like there will be moments where you'll be much closer to fear than excitement and you go back and forth. But I think as a founder, finding ways to most of the time be much closer to the excitement side than the fear side and operate out of excitement less than fear is a great way to just keep moving forward, because this stuff's hard, right? And this stuff's full of unknowns. And so there's always two ways to look at it. And I think like that's what ingredients in the early days. And it's true. Like when you have one idea, I remember the last thing I wanted to go was going back to the drawing board, back to square one, back to having no clue what we were even going to build. So when you're operating with not one idea, but let's say a priority of ideas, 3, 4, 5, whatever it is, doesn't need to be 100, it kind of frees you. So that actually, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, no, I think I call it, you have to have a healthy balance of optimism and pessimism. And in fact, I was recently advising one of the founders, about their idea. And my ask them was, can you put a slide together around why your idea is going to fail? But also then how are you going to address and solve for those challenges? So it's not about hiding away from the negatives, but you have to tackle them head on, address them, and move forward.
And so back to those conversations, you're hearing high level, the really high level thing is talent is a bigger problem. What about talent was a problem? What were people telling you?
So great question. And at that time, the biggest problem was I'm just not able to hire the right talent quickly. Hiring was a big challenge. But now what is interesting is that what market is going to tell you is today's problem. Market is not going to tell you where the problem will be in the long term. And that is for us to decide and figure it out, right? So as a founder, you're making a bet on the market, you're making a bet on the vision. And if the vision were to turn out right, you're successful. If not, you're not. So everyone was telling me that our challenge is we are not able to find people. And as part of that, we are struggling. We are going to LinkedIn. We are going to different data sources. We are reaching out to the people. Not enough people are responding. So hiring is a big challenge for us. The insight that we had on day one, as I was talking to these people, was to hire an individual, you are reaching out to or engaging 100 plus other people. So if you're a company of 10,000 employees, you have already engaged with 1 million people. And that million is equivalent to roughly the working population of Bay Area. So you have reached out to and talked to most people in Bay Area. So is it that you constantly need to keep reaching out to new people? Or you need to build a way to engage with the talent that you have already interacted with in the past? And what can I do to help you solve that problem? As you start thinking about it, that is today's problem. And the way we do the work is changing. And it has been changing for a while. Like back in the days when I was leaving my first job from IBM, it was like, how can you leave IBM? In fact, how can you leave a job? Once you have a job, you stay there for the rest of your life.
That's right.
But today, if someone has been in the company for more than 2-3 years, we start asking why. Is everything going okay? You cannot find anything else outside. But there's a pattern over there. And the pattern is people are going to leave and it's okay for them to leave. Their skills may change. The company's own requirements will change. And if you're not executing around those skills, you're not developing those skills, you will constantly face this churn, this attrition. The employment contract, the way we think about it, is also evolving a lot. I mean, people are doing a lot more freelancing. People are doing a lot more part-time gigs. In fact, many people have multiple jobs at any point in time now. So that is what shaped the thinking of Eightfold was, yes, there's a great problem to be solved today, but there are bigger problems that are going to come over time. And can we focus on building a company that will start from solving today's problem, but also shaping the market for the future?
And how do you balance that? Because it's a fair point. I mean, it's true that the customers want solutions to problems they have today. It's not their job to think about what problems they might have in 5 years and then communicate that to you so you can kind of go ahead and solve it. But as you start crafting the vision of the company, are you kind of constantly having conversations with HR leaders about your ideas of where things are going to go? Or do you just kind of leave that on the side and focus on solving their today problem, which is this, how do I hire faster?
I think you will have those conversations, but people are expecting you to be the visionary over here. And Like, here's a very simple example. During COVID time, take late 2020, there were many companies that were coming from all over the place, right? And growing extremely fast. And what was the driving force behind these companies was people have to work from home. COVID is out there. You can't go meeting people in person. You can't go to the office. So let's build a solution to solve that problem. Makes sense. There's money to be made over there. But one day the COVID is going to reduce. One day the life is going to get back to normal. And on that day, will your solution is going to be relevant or not? And if not, can you still build a company solving today's problem with a path towards solving the problem as the world is going to evolve? And thinking about it, are you solving today's problem because there's some market dynamics that is happening today that may not be relevant tomorrow? And I think that is what I mean by like where the world is today, where the world is going to be 10 years from now, 5 years from now. And why that is important is if you have a reasonable idea, let's just assume for a second, right? For any reasonable idea, you can build a business that will be 5, 10, 15, $20 million in revenue. Most markets are large enough for that. But one day you want to go public, you want to have a large company. And at that time, you will need a revenue of $1 billion. And to be able to have a revenue of $1 billion, the market has to be at least $5, $10 billion. And is the market going to be a $10 billion market 10 years from now? And if not, you're not going to succeed. So people get to, today someone is ready to write a 10K check for me. So it must be a good market and let me start something over here. These 3 people said yes. Or to your original point, right? In the early days, you have to be very paranoid. Yes, you need to look for positive signals, but you have to pay attention to the negative signals as well. And it's not about negativity, it's about solving the problem. So all those negative signals are saying that what are the things you need to watch out for.
So as you kind of develop this vision, I mean, you decide to go after this problem around talent, you develop this vision. What do you decide to build? Like, what do you think is kind of your first solution at that point?
I think the approach that I have taken for both startups was, and frankly, coming out of Google in 2008 and then coming out of Bloomreach in 2016, both I was confident personally and investors and everyone around me was confident that technology can be solved. We can build a product and technology. The key thing is there a true business problem over here or not? And do we have a way to tackle that problem or not? So what we did was we went and talked to numerous CHROs. So called roughly 50 CHROs of many different companies. And our simple question was, today, there are a lot of candidates that you have engaged with in the past. Like every time you apply to a company, you get a message saying that, thank you, Pablo, for applying. We considered your application. We don't have an opening for you right now, but someday when we have an opening for you, we will reach out to you, right? But no one does. We called these CHROs. The very first question was that if you were to take all the data that you have collected over the years, clean it up, organize it, and identify among those people from that set, who are the people who are relevant for openings in your company today, and build a framework to reach out to those people automatically and get them engaged. Would you be interested in this thing? And unanimously, the answer was yes. That sounds very interesting, very exciting. Now, of course, some people were, I don't know what these candidates are doing now. I don't know how many candidates do I have in my data set. I don't know if they will respond. And those are the things you need to solve around. But that was the initial idea, which was a rediscovery of talent.
By the way, I'm just curious on this because I remember reading a book. I think it was How Google Works. It was some book about the workings of Google. And I remember a part of it. And this might be a book that is before, it might be after, sorry, I don't remember exactly when I read it. So it might be after 2016. But they spoke about how one of their big discoveries around hiring was exactly this. It was like, it turns out the probability that somebody that applies gets hired is, I'm just going to make a number, 1%. But the probability that somebody that we've interviewed but we rejected gets hired is like 2% or 3%. So like it's actually a much better pool than the overall pool. And that was something that I don't know if you had seen that at Google or if this was maybe even actually after Eightfold or completely coincidence and unrelated.
So I'm a person who tries to journalize a lot and look for signals everywhere and learn from the experiences. So when I was at Google, I probably interviewed like 1,000 people. So I was constantly interviewing, hiring talent. So I was kind of used to that. And then even at Bloomreach, right? And actually, even if I were to put that aside, Pablo, right? Here's a very simple thing. Even at Google, you may think it's a very hot company and everyone is dying to join there. Google, there are enough people who get an offer from Google and say no. There are many times you get good talent who apply to you, but you just don't have an opening for them. Oh yeah, the rec just got filled. So I'm saying it's not even the people who get rejected. There are enough people who have rejected you, who are sitting in a database. And 2 years from now, they might be ready to join you back. And sometimes you reject people for that specific role at that moment. Doesn't mean that they are not good people. So there are very numerous factors why someone may not have joined on that day. Because you said no, they said no, the wrong fit, wrong timing, wrong compensation ban, any number of reasons.
And by the way, in these conversations that, you got this unanimous, like, yes, this would be interesting to me. What else did you ask? Did you talk about like pricing? Did you get another sense? Because it's, and I ask this because at a really high level, it's easy for customers to say yes to high level things, right? Like, hey, is this a problem? Yeah, I guess it's a problem. Like, would you use this if you had it? Yeah, I would use it. And then do they actually use it? Do they actually pay for it? Like all these other things. So I'm curious how deep you went to validating the business case during those conversations.
I mean, we tried a little bit. To be honest, we didn't do necessarily a great job. That was my first foray as a go-to-market person also. And sometimes ignorance is not bad. There are many things you don't know and you have to learn and figure it out, right? I think what we do quite a few times, we are not pegging the conversation to the ROI. See, I mean, even in this, right, I can go and ask that CHRO how much you are going to pay. And at some level, the CHRO is, yeah, I mean, if I'm in their shoes, I'm like, okay, you tell me what is the price of your product. It's a demand and supply, right? Who can do for me in the cheapest, best fashion, right? Fastest, cheaper, faster, better, right? Instead of that, question is, how much am I willing to pay for a good candidate? Today, most companies end up paying 20% of the comp to hire the right person. Anytime, in fact, you're hiring contractor, you still end up paying 20% overhead. So for someone with a compensation of 200K, companies end up paying $20,000 to $40,000. So if I'm able to surface, identify 10 good candidates out of which you end up hiring 3, 50 to 100K is not an unreasonable amount to go and demand that customer. And key thing is that, see, at any point in time, you're talking to these 50 people, some will be savvy, some won't be savvy, some will give you a low ball number, some will give you a high ball number, right? You don't have a product. You don't even have a company. They don't lose anything by saying that, oh yeah, Ashu will pay you a lot, right? Or they may not get the problem completely or solution completely. And they may say that, no, I'm not going to pay you more than 5K, 10K. So yes, there's a signal over there, but you really need to have the pulse on the market. Like, what is the fundamental problem you're trying to solve and what is the value of solving that problem? And if you do it right, then you can come up with a pricing strategy that will work over time.
That makes sense. I mean, it is ultimately about ROI. And in some cases, like in this case, it was actually the best when the ROI is clear in your face, right? So when there's already a cost associated to hiring and you can do it faster, better for the same price or for 50% less, or whatever it is, like that gives you a pretty clear yardstick of what the market is willing to absorb. Okay. So after these conversations and you get this kind of unanimous yes, you're feeling like there's something here, I assume. Do you now get to building or what is your next step at that point?
At Eightfold, what we did, and actually at some level, we did the same thing at Bloomreach, is that now this is a space I want to be in. This is a problem I want to solve. I went and raised some money, got an initial team in place of 4 or 5 people.
How much did you raise?
Around $5 million.
How much of that would you say was about the thesis? I mean, you kind of alluded to this earlier. And how much was it just about you and the credibility you already had, the relationships you already built with investors?
I think both things have to come together. Ultimately, as an investor, you need to feel that, is this the person who can solve this problem or not? And is this a problem that worth solving? And even when they say that it is about an individual, right? They are betting on this individual will figure out something over here. So if they need to pivot, they need to change directions, they will adopt according to the market what they're hearing. And one thing that I would say in hindsight, we did is smart, both in case of Bloomreach and in case of Eightfold, was have investors part of those conversations. The thing that you didn't, I mean, again, because of the past credibility that I had, it was easier for me. But when I went to Lightspeed, right, and I was talking to Peter. So what Peter did was, Peter assigned a junior person from the firm, saying that, why don't you help Ashu set a few CHRO calls and see what comes out? So as I was building my thesis, Lightspeed was building their own thesis as well over here. So Lightspeed was part of those calls. So whatever I heard from those prospective buyers, Lightspeed also heard exactly the same thing. And so it was kind of a weird due diligence going on in the real time, right? As the process is unfolding. And at some point, their conviction is probably even higher than my conviction.
Okay, so then you raise that round, you hire a team. And how did you think about, like, did you think through an MVP kind of lean startup approach, or did you build in a different, kind of with a different mindset altogether?
Always lean startup mode. Sometimes over years, people will complain, why didn't you build all these things? Why didn't you build a more robust product? Why didn't you build a more robust solution? Well, I didn't know what to build at that time. I was trying to figure out what to build, right? I want to conserve cash. I want to go as fast to the market as possible, right? We started coding probably on 1st September 2016. And by November and early December, we had a paying customer.
So 3 to 4 months to a V1 and a paying customer. What was that V1? What did you constrain it to in order to be able to ship something so quickly?
It was largely a matching solution where the idea was that for your open requisitions and a database of candidates, for each person, we can analyze what they have done in the past, what skills they have. Based on that, we can understand their learnability for the new set of things and use that to figure out who is the right person for which role in the organization.
Really what you're doing, you're ingesting the database of candidates that they've already kind of gone through, talked to, have resumes, et cetera, and figuring out who might be good for the role. And you're surfacing up, I guess, a list of names per role. And it ends there. Like at that point, they take it on, they do their normal interview process, and they decide whether they want to hire somebody or not. And how did you structure that pilot? Like at that point, did you start thinking about pricing? Did you do a pilot for free?
In this case, all these were paid pilots. So actually not even the paid pilots, they were like regular customers.
And what were the results? Like how well did that V1 work?
I think that is where I would say I tripped over. The product worked well. The customers were happy. We signed 5 or 6 customers between 1st December and 31st Jan. And I was talking to one of my investors and the person was like, too much success early on may actually be the wrong signal. Because these people probably know you and they are signed because of you. Customers also, right? Or not having a success as well could be a wrong signal. So while we signed 5, 6 very, very quickly, pretty much like out of the 10 conversations, 5 signed. I was like, this is working.
They're not trivial. I mean, $25K a year, like we're talking about $150K of new revenue in a month. Like it's looking amazing.
We didn't sign anyone in February and March. I was like, okay, this is not working. We need to pivot over here.
What had happened? Was it really just your relationships? People just believed in you and they were like, okay, yeah, sure, let's do it.
No, it was I being this anxious founder who was trying to move fast, but things just take time. So I kind of pivoted it to a new business model, a little bit slightly different product, slightly different setup. And in fact, by mid-March, we said we are going to stop selling the product we sold in the first 2 months. And we started selling a slightly different variant of that product.
What were the key differences?
The second product that we built was helping you manage the candidates that are coming from recruiting agencies. So the idea was that as an enterprise, you're signing up with multiple recruiting agencies, and it's hard to manage all these agencies. They send you the candidates. Sometimes the other duplicate candidates. Sometimes they send you low quality candidates, right, who are not matching your positions. So what we will do is we'll be the layer. Agencies can submit the candidates to us. We can submit to the enterprises. Similarly, agencies, they have all these candidates they're talking to. They have a hard time finding the right enterprises to work with. So we're like, okay, if we can have the contract with enterprise, on the other side, we can have the contract with agencies. We become the marketplace of candidates.
That's pretty different. I mean, you're obviously still in employment. You're still helping people hire, but it's quite different to work with agencies and kind of be this middle layer versus just the in-house existing database and kind of rematching, right?
Exactly. So it was very different. We shut down the first, not shut down, but because we had customers, the good thing was, but we stopped selling the first product. It was a hard guidance to the sales team. You cannot sell that. You're only going to sell this new thing. And in the second one, the pricing was on a usage based. You can sign up the contract. You don't have to pay us anything. Only when you start hiring, per hire, you pay us some money as a commission a percentage of the commission that you would pay to the agency. Till October, November, was just selling the second product. And we went and signed 100 plus customers for that as well. So in that sense, that was working well. But no enterprise is excited to work with agencies because they don't like to write a 40K check. So it was a kind of a weird, dynamics where enterprises have to work with agencies, but they don't like to work with agencies. Some of that mess.
And you signed 100 customers, but it was all usage based.
Money was not large. I think it was probably $250,000, $500,000, something like that.
Okay.
Not bad.
But yeah, something for sure.
But as that was happening, what I kept hearing little bit is there was still an excitement about our original product in the market. So by November, I realized that no, actually that was a mistake to stop selling the first one. We need to keep selling that as well.
Maybe go deeper on that. Like when you're saying you're hearing excitement, how was that happening? Customers were just asking you like, hey, what happened to your first product? Like, I want to see that again, or how direct was it?
Yeah, I don't want to work with agencies, but can you just help me with my own hiring?
I see.
I don't want to pay per hire fees. I want to pay some SaaS subscription fee. I already have too many candidates coming in. I'm a hot startup, so I really don't need help with new candidates. I really help on filtering and screening these people, right? And I'm like, yeah, I do have a product for that, which I'm not selling right now. But I did sell that product to a few companies who are still using it, right? By December of 2017, we went back to the old product. And by, I think, Jan or Feb of 2018, we shut down the second product.
Incredible.
I mean, you have to be just open to hearing what's going on. I think the part is be open to proven wrong. Not everything will go as you wanted it to, but it's not about you. Don't take it personally. It's about the product, technology at that moment, right? The market need. And if you align yourself to the market need, most of the things will work out well.
And how did they work out? So as you then relaunched the product in 2018, how did things go from there?
We haven't looked back. Things have just gone well.
Do you recall like how many customers you signed in that first year, or just how fast things took off?
I think more than how many customers. So we did few pivots in some sense, right? One was the product shift that we did. Second thing was initially, you start a company in the Bay Area, all your friends are in Bay Area, your network is in Bay Area, right? You start calling these people, you start selling into them, right? So we were selling to Bay Area startups. The challenge with them was they just didn't have enough people in their database. If you're a 10% company, you just don't have enough candidates, right? So the problem you can solve for them is minimal. So it was like, okay, can we sell it to the large enterprises? So the second pivot we had was instead of selling to the Bay Area startups, we started selling it to large enterprises outside.
And when was this?
In 2018. And what was very exciting was that the kind of customers we were able to attract even in 2018 as a very small company were some of the household names. I don't remember, but for example, we signed American Express of the world in 2018-2019 timeframe. So very quickly, we were able to sign up some of the biggest brand names. And I think that has been a unique thing about Eightfold journey till date is if you look at the brand names of the customers that we have, I don't think there's any other company of our size which will have so many Fortune 500 companies out there.
And walk me through, like, from what I see, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I see in mid 2018, you raised a pretty large kind of $18 million round. What was the basis of that? Was that like numbers based, like your revenues already in the millions, or was it more around just seeing some of these big logos jumping on board? Like, what do you think drove that round?
So 2018 round was more driven by the conviction in the product technology as it was shaping up and early indicators, not the revenue. Then I think we raised another round in 2019 that was based on the revenue traction that we were getting. And I would say the first 2-3 rounds typically are based on the product technology market conviction. And the later rounds are more driven by the revenue numbers.
Let me end it there. That was great to kind of walk through that journey. And let me just ask the last two questions that we always end on. The first one is, for you personally, like, when was the moment when you felt, or if there is one, right? When did you feel like you had true product market fit? Let me answer slightly differently. I don't think I ever feel that I have a true product market fit. This market is constantly evolving. So it's more around, do I have a conviction that I'm going in the right direction? And if I keep on evolving with the market, I will have a phenomenal product and business. And I would say that by mid 2018, late 2018, it was clear that we are on to something really big over here. You can use number of different indicators over here. One indicator is revenue. Second is number of customers. Third is, are other people in your company able to sell your product without you? Fourth is what value those people are getting. Fifth is how many of those customers are renewing, buying more from you. Sixth is, how is the rest of the market reacting to what you are doing? So I think there's a combination of all these things. More often than not, in your gut, whether you have the product market fit or not. Is this where you want to spend your life and more money and more resources or not, right? And sometimes you're not paying attention to that part. So I think it was clear that with the kind of customers we were getting, the kind of traction we were getting in the market, how everyone else was talking about us, how different people in the company were able to sell the product, that we have something real going on over here. And by the way, like when you did do that, you kind of in 2018 went back on this full product. Like, how quickly did you ramp to like 1 or 2 or 3 million in ARR?
I think in a year, we went from roughly 1 to 3 to 12 and beyond.
It's interesting. And this often happens, right? Like the beginning, I would not say it took a while, but it like, you had that little blip and then that false pivot. And then, you kind of get to that 1, but then it's like 3, 12. I mean, that's a pretty crazy ramp from then on. Pretty exciting. And then last question is, if you could go back to yourself, and this is, now you've had, because of Bloomreach and Eightfold, decades of experience building startups, and I know you talk to a lot of founders, so I'll ask it this way, what do you find is some of the most common advice that you give to founders who are in that early stage, who are in the process of finding product market fit?
One is, are you solving a real market need or not? Are you in a big market or not? Don't capitalize on the short-term trend, but focus on the long-term things. And the last and the most important one is, don't fall in love with your own product. Focus on, again, the market need and keep adopting to solve that problem.
Well, Ashutosh, thank you so much for taking the time. This has been awesome.
Excellent. Thank you, Pablo.
If you listen to this episode and the show and you like it, I have a huge favor to ask for you. Well, it's actually a really small favor, but it has huge impact. But whichever app you're listening to this episode on, take it out, go to a Product Market Fit Show, and leave a review. Please. It's going to help. It's not just going to help me, to be clear. It's going to help other founders discover this show, because the algorithms, whether it's Spotify, whether it's Apple, whether it's any other podcast player, one of the big things they look at is frequency of reviews. It's quantity of reviews. And the reality is, if all of you listening right now left reviews, we would have thousands of reviews. So please take literally a minute, even if you're just writing great podcast, or I love this podcast, whatever it is, just write a few words. Obviously, the longer the better, the more detailed the better, but write anything, leave 5 stars, and you will be helping me, but most importantly, many other founders just like you discover the show. Thank you.